learner. The other day, I watched Aaron Smith-Levin's latest assessment of the number of members the Church of Scientology has today being less than 35,000. He broadly estimated some 10,000 to 12,000 staff, including Sea Org members, and about 25,000 public Scientologists. That is a ratio of one staff member to 2.5 clients or paying customers. That is absurd. What are all these people doing? They may be busy around the clock, but what is each one, in fact, producing? Movies, spying, cleaning, cooking, etc., etc. It all seems like making work for each other and being involved in things that don't actually bring in money or provide services. Thousands of auditors for whom? How many persons does the average auditor service? Or better, what is the maximum number he or she can handle? Then there is the acquisition of expensive real estate. I saw the Church of Scientology acquired Kailami Castle in Johannesburg, a huge, crazily opulent millionaire's dream dominating the Lone Hill skyline close to where I used to work. How can they ever hope to make such a thing pay? Surely the local Scientologists cannot be expected to finance something like that. There simply aren't enough of them with money. It will probably stand empty most of the time. Similarly, in Basel, where I now live, there's an ideal org, an office block costing many millions which stands empty most of the time and where nobody seems to be doing anything. Purchasing buildings like this may prove they are wealthy and growing, but they cost a whole lot of money, servicing bonds, maintaining, and so on. Eventually, all of this is surely going to deplete the funds of the church, as tying up such a lot of money in investments on which there is no return must finally lead to insolvency? Can you explain this kind of financing, how it is organized, and what the eventual outcome is expected to be versus what it is likely to be? Okay, Eric, there's a lot to unpack there. So let me just focus on the financing part of this so we can at least be clear about one part of this. I mean, there's I don't know, probably about an hour worth of explanatory material to break down everything you just asked me about. But let's just go ahead and focus on that. Because I've answered many times what it is that Scientology staff members do all day on this show. And you can go and look at my earlier episodes in the Critical Q&A series to find answers to that. I've answered it a couple times. But as far as the financing goes, the Church of Scientology will not spend money on something if they can get their parishioners to donate for it in advance instead. So rarely, it does happen, but it's fairly rare that Scientology reserves, the money used up at the higher levels, will flow down in order to purchase a building or fund a project or fund volunteer ministers flying to an area or anything, any kind of project or mission or activity. Generally speaking, they want to pay for it before it happens or while it's happening, but they don't want to incur a lot of debt and obligation and liability. So they have all this money up in reserves, and that just sits there. And Hubbard's policies are you make more money than you need, and you sock away a bunch of money in reserves, and you don't spend any of that money. That money does not exist. If you need money for something, you got to go make more money, right? This is the policy letter, which is often quoted about make money, make more money, right? So Kailami Castle, for example, was probably fundraised by people, rich, wealthy Scientologists in South Africa, around the world. And of course, because it's an advanced organization and a Sea Org base, it also was funded by reserve money, as far as I know, or at least it's in my understanding of how finances work in Scientology. The advanced organizations, the churches of Scientology that are manned by Sea Org members, which is the ASHOs, the St. Hill orgs, the advanced orgs, all of the organizations in Clearwater, Florida, all of the ones at Big Blue, right, in Los Angeles, those are all funded by the Sea Org. And the money comes from those out of the money that is made every week by those organizations. They can put aside their own funds, or they can appeal for a grant from the IAS, or the Church of Scientology International just wants to get something done, so they throw the money at it. These buildings are all fully paid for before they open them. Kailami Castle or any of the ideal orgs that are being opened, the fundraising is done beforehand. It's not fundraised a little bit and then they purchase the building and have a lease or have to have a mortgage payment. That's not how it works. They buy the entire thing flat out. Then they fundraise for all the renovations for it, and that gets done. And then they open the building, and it's all paid for, lock, stock, and barrel. All they have to do now is pay for the utilities and the building upkeep and maintain the staff there. So it tends to be not a really high operating cost for these churches after they've done all this fundraising or had the building bought by Sea Org reserves, and then it's over to the staff to just kind of keep the thing going. So we're not really talking about a lot of overhead. Also, the staff get paid shit. So there's not a lot of staff pay necessary for these guys. I mean, the staff are ecstatic if they're making $100 or $200 or $300 a week. And apparently in some places they're up to making that now. Where I was on staff in Santa Barbara back in the day, I mean, I maxed out at $100, and I think that happened only a couple times. Most of the time in Santa Barbara, I was making $50, $60, $70 a week, $10 a week, no money at all. And that is definitely the case with most of these organizations. Okay, so as far as the staff producing and that kind of thing, I mean, again, a lot to unpack there, but basically, auditors, for example, you asked about, can service. If you had an auditor, they can basically service about 2 or 3 pre-clears at a time, maybe 4 or 5 if their board is really full up. They want to get people in for many, many hours during the day, for example. They want to get 5, 6 hours, slots going, and then they'll just run that PC through as many, processes and actions as they can in that time, and gradually work them up the bridge. But you can have an auditor could have as few as 1 or 2 PCs or as many as 10. Really depends on the scheduling of the pre-clears, but really, I mean, 10's stretching it. You'd, generally speaking, you want to get the auditing delivered in 12.5 hours a week or 25 hours a week, even better. And if you're going to deliver 12.5 or 25 hours to somebody, they're going to be around for quite a while. I mean, that's, 25 hours is 5 hours a day for Monday through Friday. That's pretty full board for any auditor. They might have another part-time pre-clear on there, but that's about it. So, 1 auditor to 2.5 PCs kind of works out as far as how the scheduling is supposed to work and that kind of thing. The place where you get a lot of public being serviced on a 1 staff member to many public ratio is in the course rooms. You can have 1 supervisor can deal with up to 20 students, and I've actually personally supervised up to 90 at a time. So, you can have 1 supervisor dealing with a whole lot of people at one shot. It's a little crazy, 90 students in there. That's, the supervisor's just running ragged, and people are definitely not getting the attention that they need. The proper ratio is more about 1 to 20. And generally speaking, that's not accomplished or met because there's hardly ever that many students in a Scientology classroom at any one time. More often, it's about 5 to 10 students at a time per scheduled slot. So that's kind of how the service lines go. Most of the staff are posted at the executive level, at the public divisions level to get new people in the technical area to service people, supervisors and auditors, and the moneymakers. You have the bookstore officer, you have registrars, the salespeople, and then you have a motley crew of people scattered around the other areas of the organizing board in Scientology. You might have some more executive personnel posted in Division 7. You might have 1 or 2 people in treasury dealing with all the money and invoicing and accounts and all that kind of stuff. You might have a couple people in this qualifications division doing quality control. And that's kind of how it generally, works out. The tech division, Division 4, is supposed to be there's supposed to be 2 people in tech for every 1 person in the rest of the organization. So that's where most of the people are supposed to be. Doesn't usually work out that way, but that's ratio-wise, that's how it's supposed to work out. You also want to have in this general organizing situation, I keep sort of having this imaginary organizing board in front of me here with all the divisions in it. I just kind of talk that way and think that way. But in Division 6 over here is supposed to be about a third of the staff of the organization. So if you work out some ratios and some numbers, that's kind of how it's supposed to kind of look. And these staff, do anything from selling books and trying to body route, bring new people in, to calling people on the phones all day long, just calling, trying to get new people in or trying to get existing members to donate or come in more often, beef up their schedule, get more committed. That's generally the kind of work that gets done. They write a lot of letters. There's a lot of pressure to get the stats up. So they're always working on whatever they can do to do that. I mean, hell, as a staff member in Division 4, when I was servicing the public, I wasn't always just a supervisor or an auditor. There's also logistics and ancillary personnel in Division 4. I was the director of tech services for a while, and that job includes calling people and getting them in for their services, but also logistics work. I mean, I babysat people's kids while they were on course because their babysitter fell through. Or, I was out washing cars one time because this woman had a bunch of errands to run and we wanted her to get through her course. And it was going to be one or the other, and her life was just, what it was. So I got, tapped to go out and, wash her car, clean her house, and she then could come on course and do her coursework, right? I mean, it gets that ridiculous. So that's, that's kind of a general answer to, your question. I hope that gives some details, and feel free to ask me about any other details I might not have filled in here.